This story is a boring but truthful history lesson for sleep, an anatomy of poverty without embellishment or excuses. Nearly 100,000 characters of dreary, repetitive, and hopeless routine, where every morning brings no hope and every evening no relief. You will see the city from the side. People prefer not to notice, through the eyes of someone who finds value in rubbish, who competes with rats and dogs for scraps, who fears the darkness, the cold, sickness, and the indifference of the city watch. Here, every crumb of food is a victory, and every night under a leaky roof is a real miracle. But before you get comfortable, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you are watching from and what time it is where you are. I'm really curious to see who has joined us. Now make yourself comfortable. We're starting. You awake before dawn because you never truly sleep. Not in the way you imagine sleep might feel for the rich, with their feather beds and warm furs, but in the way that only the desperate know, drifting in and out, clutching a thin layer of filthy cloth, listening for rats beneath the floor and thieves outside the walls. The shanty you call home is built from the broken dreams and rotten boards abandoned by people luckier than you. Mud and straw fill the cracks, neither keeping out the cold nor the stink. You have been cold for so long that you barely notice it anymore, except in the burning ache of your knuckles and the slow crawl of numbness up your toes. Outside, the morning brings no relief. There is no cheerful chorus of songbirds here, only the low, pitiful groan of the city as it wakes with you. You hear the shifting of bodies in neighboring hovels, a cough, a groan, the slap of bare feet against muddy ground. Perhaps someone curses the thinness of their soup or spits out a tooth loosened by last night's bread. You tell yourself that you are ready for the day, but this is a lie you have mastered. In truth, you are never ready. No one is ever ready for what the city has in store for you. Before you step outside, you take a moment to look at yourself, though you do not need a mirror to know what you will see. Your hair is a tangled mat, stiff with grease and dirt. Your hands, once small and clever, are now covered in scars and scabs. The skin beneath your nails is always black, no matter how often you scrape at it with broken pottery or a sharp stone. Your clothes, if they could be called that, are a patchwork of other people's discards. One sleeve too long, the other chewed off by rats. Your feet are wrapped in scraps of cloth, bound tightly so that the sores will not spread too quickly. You step outside and breathe deeply, instantly regretting the decision. The air is thick with the sour smell of decay, human waste, rotting vegetables, the faint copper tang of blood. Somewhere nearby, a dog whines, then falls silent. You glance at the sky, but it is hidden behind a gray sheet of clouds and smoke. There will be no sunlight today, only the sluggish crawl of time. Your stomach rumbles, and you remember that you have not eaten since yesterday's scraps. If 2 bites of moldy bread and a mouthful of dirty water can be called a meal, hunger is your oldest companion, gnawing at your insides, whispering that maybe today you will find something better. Maybe today someone will throw away a crust still soft enough to chew, or a bone with a sliver of fat left on it. You know better than to hope, but hope is the one thing you have never managed to throw away. You move through the maze of narrow alleys that make up your neighborhood. Mud sucks at your feet, pulling you down, trying to remind you of your place. Around you, life stirs in all its wretched forms. Children chase rats with sticks. Women empty chamber pots into the gutter. Old men wheeze and spit and mutter curses at the world. You nod to a few familiar faces, though there is little warmth in your greetings. Here, everyone is competition, everyone is threat, everyone is reminder of what you could become or what you already are. Your first stop is the heap behind the baker's shop. It is still dark, and the baker has not yet arrived, but sometimes his wife will toss out yesterday's spoiled dough, green and fuzzy, and just this side of edible. Not today. Only a few hard lumps remain, picked clean by birds and rats. You take one anyway, hiding it in the fold of your shirt. Even the rats have left something for you today. A good omen, you tell yourself. Another lie. You pass the tanner's yard, where men in leather aprons scrape hides and dump buckets of brownish water into the gutter. The smell here is different, sharper, like urine and burnt hair. The tanners glare at you as you pass. They do not like scavengers. They say you spread disease, as if disease needs any help in this part of town. You find a dead dog in the gutter, its eyes already pecked out by crows. You consider, for a moment, whether the skin could be scraped and sold. Someone would pay for it, if only to keep their feet dry a little longer. But the tanners would know. They always know. You keep walking. As the city wakes, you begin your true work. You are not a beggar, not exactly. You are a scavenger, a collector of the things others are too proud or too frightened to touch. You live on what the city discards, which means you are never out of work, but always out of hope. Your hands are your tools, your nose is your guide, and your stomach is your clock. Each day is the same, yet each day is different enough to keep you from madness. You steel yourself for what lies ahead. The markets, the middens, the streets and alleys where filth piles up faster than it can be washed away. There is no glory in what you do, no respect to be earned, only another day survived. But as you take your first true steps into the city, you remind yourself, if you do not go, someone else will. If you do not find something to eat, you will die. And you are not ready to die, not yet. You step into the street as the city begins to truly awaken. If this shambling, groaning sprawl could ever be said to awaken, it is more of a sluggish shrug, a stretching of weary limbs that have never known comfort, a collective complaint offered to the sky. You are one of the first outside, though not by choice. In your line of work, the early risers get the least rotten scraps, and the latecomers find only bones and disappointment. The alley outside your hovel is a labyrinth of refuse, puddles of something more sinister than rainwater and detritus in every imaginable form. There is a precise choreography to your movements. You must step just so, avoiding the slick piles where chamber pots have been emptied, leaping over the open gutter that snakes down the center of the lane. You are not alone in these maneuvers. Others, clad in tatters and suspicion, slink through the same spaces, each with their own routes and rituals. You have learned over years the best order in which to visit the city's many unofficial dumps. First, the small square behind the butcher's, where he tosses bones too ragged for his own dog. If you are quick, there may be marrow left in a few, though it is a dangerous place. The butcher has been known to chase off scavengers with a cleaver and a string of well practiced curses. Today, you are in luck. The door is still closed, and in the pile of cast offs, you spot a rib with a suspicious glisten. You examine it carefully, deciding that the maggots are still young and could be picked off later. Into your sack it goes, a treasure by your standards. Next, the alley where the vegetable sellers gather before the market opens. Here, you must be quick and polite. Too slow, and the real owners will arrive to claim what remains. Too pushy, and the other scavengers may take offense. You spot a bruised onion, a wilted carrot, something that might once have been a turnip. Each is handled with the reverence of a sacred relic. You make a mental note to check the gutters again later. Sometimes a careless cart will drop a few beans or a chunk of cheese, though it is a rare and precious thing. The sun, if it can be called that, behind the eternal shroud of smoke and cloud, begins to hint at its presence. The shadows shorten, the colors shift from black to a dull brown. It is at this hour that the city's true refuse emerges, swept out by servants and apprentices from the finer houses. You stand at a respectful distance from a kitchen door, waiting for the clatter of a slop bucket. When it comes, you dart in, scraping the inside with your fingers, careful to avoid the shards of broken pottery that always seem to lurk at the bottom. It is not only food that you seek. Old rags, twisted bits of metal, a broken comb, the heel of a shoe, anything with a shape or a weight is worthy of consideration. You remember a time when you might have blushed to be seen picking through garbage, but that was 1,000 humiliations ago. Now, your only fear is missing something valuable while you look over your shoulder. The streets themselves are a constant hazard. There are horses here, but not the gleaming beasts you have seen in the processions of the wealthy. These are bony, miserable creatures that leave steaming piles in their wake. You must navigate around them and the droppings and the children who play in the muck without a second thought. Once, you stumbled and fell face first into a heap of straw and filth. You learned to laugh at yourself because everyone else certainly did. The market begins to come alive, vendors shouting and cursing as they set up their stalls. You are tolerated here, barely. The merchants know you will not buy, but you are useful in your own way. You keep the alleys clear, you haul away what they cannot sell, you make yourself invisible when the customers arrive. Some even nod to you, though their eyes never linger. To see a scavenger is to be reminded of the thin line between their comfort and your misery. You make your way to the docks, the last stop on your morning rounds. The river is a living thing, fat and slow, its surface choked with everything the city does not want. Here, the real treasures can be found. Barrels that have slipped from careless hands, crates pried open by desperate thieves, clothing tossed away by someone with means. You watch the water carefully, waiting for something to float close enough to snatch with your pole. Today, it is only a sodden sack. You fish it out anyway. Sometimes these bags contain flour too damp to sell, but still edible if dried. By now, your sack is heavier, though not by much. You carry not only the literal weight of the city's cast offs, but the invisible burden of knowing that each day is the same and that nothing you collect will last beyond the next meal. Your hands are already raw, your fingernails rimmed in black. You pause by a wall, listening to the sounds of the city, the shouting, the laughter, the howls of stray dogs. Somewhere, a bell tolls. It is not for you. You consider for a moment the other people who share your fate. There is old Tom, who lost his toes to frostbite and now hobbles with a stick. Marie, who scavenges with her children tied to her back. The twins who never speak, but always seem to find the best scraps. You nod if you pass them, but rarely speak. Here, every friend is a rival, every kindness a risk. You pull a bit of cloth over your nose as the stench rises, the sun warming the piles of offal and turning them into something almost living. You are used to this smell. You wonder if, perhaps, you would miss it if it ever went away. Likely not. With your morning rounds nearly finished, you head back toward your corner of the world. The day stretches out ahead, and you are already tired. But you have learned that tiredness is as much a part of you as hunger or filth, and that the city is never finished testing your endurance. There will be more to find, more to lose, more to endure. The morning is only the beginning. You sit on the splintered stoop of an abandoned house, your feet aching in their bandages, the city's morning cacophony swelling around you. The air is already thick with the scent of refuse and the distant promise of rain. You have gathered your treasures. If anything scraped from the gutter and fished from the mud could be called a treasure. This is your time for breakfast, or at least for whatever passes for it in your world. Your haul is meager. You pull the rib bone from your sack, scraping off the last of the white, wriggling maggots with a cracked fingernail. One or two escape your notice, but that hardly matters. Maggots are better than nothing, and you have long ago stopped letting your stomach fuss over such things. The marrow is nearly gone, but you gnaw at the bone with dogged determination, feeling your teeth scrape over the hard surface. There is a faint taste of rot, earthy and sour, but you imagine, if you close your eyes, that it is meat. Next comes the bread, hard, small, covered in a blue-green fuzz. You tear off the moldiest bits and toss them aside for the birds, who hop closer, bold as ever. You chew what remains. The bread is dry and crumbles to dust on your tongue, but it fills the empty place inside you, even if only for a moment. You do not remember the last time you ate fresh bread. The memory is too faded, buried beneath years of meals like this. A bruised onion and a wilted carrot, unearthed from the vegetable seller's alley, come next. The onion's skin is paper thin and sticks to your fingers, the flesh beneath gone soft and translucent. You nibble it anyway, savoring the sharp, tear inducing tang that cuts through the constant taste of sourness in your mouth. The carrot is mostly skin and fiber, nearly as tough as the sole of an old shoe, but you chew it with the patience of someone who knows that every bite counts. You glance at your other finds, a bit of string, a handful of cracked nuts, a piece of broken pottery with traces of last night's stew baked onto it. There is, too, the sodden sack you pulled from the river. You open it now, fingers trembling with the anticipation of disappointment. Inside is flour, or what remains of it, clumped and wet and tinged gray. It smells faintly of fish and river mud, but you do not hesitate. You scrape out a small ball, roll it between your palms, and pop it into your mouth. Grit crunches between your teeth. You chew slowly, thinking only of the fullness it might provide, not the taste. All around you, life continues in its familiar patterns. You watch as other scavengers pass by, some alone, some with children trailing like ducklings. You see a woman cradling a baby as she digs through the refuse beside a tavern, hoping for a spill of ale or a crust too stale even for the rats. The child does not cry. It is too weak or too used to disappointment. A boy with a scarred face picks through the gutter, his eyes darting from side to side as if he expects at any moment to be chased off. You nod at him, a brief acknowledgement of shared misery. The city's respectable folk begin to emerge, their boots clean, their cloaks drawn tight against the stench. They do not look at you. They do not look at any of you. You have learned that you are invisible, except when you are in the way. A baker's apprentice swears at you as he sweeps crumbs from his doorstep, making a show of shooing you off, though you are nowhere near him. You smile, showing teeth as gray as the sky. It is better to be feared than pitied, you tell yourself, though you are neither. As you finish your meal, such as it is, you look down at your hands. They are cracked and stained, the skin thick with callus and grime. Under your nails is a lifetime of dirt. You remember a story once told by an old priest about a man who washed himself clean of sin by bathing in holy water. You wonder how much water it would take to scrub you clean, not just of the filth, but of the memories of all these mornings, of every meal snatched from the jaws of the city's waste. A sudden shout interrupts your reverie. Across the alley, two boys fight over a crust of bread, their blows wild and desperate. No one intervenes. This is the law of the gutter. What you find is yours. What you keep is your life. One boy lands a punch. The other stumbles back, clutching his trophy. The loser sits on the ground, rubbing his jaw and staring at you with hollow eyes. You shrug, unable to offer comfort or advice. There is none to give. You wrap the remains of your meal, a crumb of bread, a piece of onion, in a scrap of cloth, and tuck it inside your shirt. There is no waste in your world. What cannot be eaten now will be eaten later, or traded, or left for the rats and the birds. Hunger has taught you patience, and patience has kept you alive. The city grows louder as the sun struggles to climb behind the clouds. Bells ring from distant towers. Somewhere, a market crier announces the price of eggs and salt, goods you will never taste. The air is full of shouts, laughter, curses, and always, always, the underlying noise of hope slowly suffocating beneath the weight of survival. You stand, bones creaking, and sling your sack over your shoulder. Another day stretches before you, as gray and endless as the one before. You take a final look at the little pile of crumbs at your feet, then at the birds that hop closer, ever hopeful. You envy them a little. They can fly, at least, when the city gets too close. But you cannot. You walk, instead, back into the twisting maze of alleys, following the scent of rot and the promise of something, anything, left behind. You have learned over endless mornings that timing is everything. There is no grand science, no written code, just the rhythm of the city, a clock made from hunger and necessity. Too early, and the refuse has not yet been set out. Too late, and your rivals have already stripped it bare. Your rivals are everywhere. Some as obvious as barking dogs, some as quiet as rats. Most are neither friend nor enemy, but that can change in a breath. After your pitiful breakfast, you circle back to the market square. The place is coming alive in earnest now. Merchants drag their carts through mud, barking at apprentices to hurry. Street sweepers trudge along, scraping muck into piles. The stench is changing, growing sharper, a living presence that wraps itself around your head and crawls up your nose. You pay it no mind. There is a certain dance here, one you know by heart. Some piles must be left alone until the right moment. A rich household's scraps, for example, may draw a crowd if word gets out. Sometimes the bravest or hungriest make the first move, diving for a basket of peelings or a bucket of slops, risking a broom to the face or a curse from an angry cook. Other times, you must wait, loitering at a distance, eyes fixed on your goal, trying not to look desperate. Today, as always, the competition is thick. The old woman with the twisted back lurks at the corner, her sharp eyes following every movement. You do not know her name. She has been here longer than you, longer than anyone, they say. Next to her, two young boys whisper to each other, glancing your way with something between challenge and fear. Farther off, a gaunt man with a limp circles the market's edge, his movements smooth, practiced. He is quick and clever, and he has taken scraps from under your nose more than once. You must choose your moment. You learn from the way the apprentices move, watching for the careless toss of a pot, the dropping of a bruised apple. Sometimes you pretend not to notice until the others look away. There is a delicate balance in appearing both harmless and invisible. The worst thing you can do is attract the attention of the market's stallholders. Too many scavengers at once, and the merchants will drive everyone off, spoiling the morning's work. Then comes a sudden flurry. A vendor drops a sack of rotting cabbages with a thud, cursing the city and its endless rain. Instantly, the air is full of motion. The old woman lunges, faster than you'd expect for her age. The boys dart in from the side, and the man with the limp is already there, picking through the pile. You hesitate only a moment before joining the melee, knowing hesitation means hunger. Elbows fly, sharp words are exchanged. One of the boys shoves you, eyes wild. You shove back, half heartedly, unwilling to risk real violence over food that may make you sick. The man with the limp grabs a head of cabbage, tears off the outer leaves, and shoves the rest inside his coat. You manage to snatch a handful of wilted greens and a broken turnip before the vendor returns, swinging a broom with surprising force. The crowd scatters, and you tumble backward, breathless, turnip still clutched tight. You do not always win these contests. Sometimes you go hungry. Sometimes you pay for your hunger with bruises or split lips. Sometimes, like today, you come away with just enough to keep your belly from caving in. There is no victory, only survival. After the chaos, you retreat to a quieter corner to inspect your spoils. The turnip is soft, the greens limp and flecked with dirt. You brush them off and slip them into your sack. You know you will have to wash them in the river if you can stomach the thought. You take a moment to watch the others. The old woman sorts through her handful of cabbage leaves, muttering to herself. The boys disappear into the alleys, giggling with their prize. The man with the limp nods at you, a small, weary sign of respect from one survivor to another. Competition is not limited to people. The dogs are everywhere, yellow-eyed and skinny, teeth bared in constant warning. You have learned to avoid them when you can, to defend your finds with a stick or a rock when you cannot. You once saw a pack drag a child away from a pile of bones. No one helped. The memory keeps you wary. And then there are the rats. They are not shy. They swarm the piles as soon as they are thrown, sometimes before. You compete with them for every scrap and often lose. You have learned to spot their tunnels and nests, to avoid their bites, to accept that sometimes you will eat what they have touched. Even the birds, fat city crows, clever and cruel, join in. They wait above, watching for any morsel dropped or forgotten. Sometimes you curse them, but secretly you admire their audacity. You wonder if you are so different, really. The hours slip by in a cycle of waiting and rushing, eyes always open, hands always ready. Every moment, you weigh risk against reward. A better scrap, but a harder fight. An easier mark, but less to gain. Hunger makes you bold, but boldness brings danger. By midday, you are exhausted, your sack heavier, but your legs unsteady. You know there will be more battles to come over food, over rags, over a patch of dry ground to sleep on. You have not spoken more than a handful of words all morning, yet your throat aches with the effort of existing. You have learned that in this city, mercy is in short supply, and luck is the only currency that matters. Today, luck was with you. Tomorrow, who can say? For now, you press on, clutching your meager winnings, already thinking of the next pile, the next chance, the next meal. You drag yourself away from the noise and filth of the market, clutching your sack like a miser clings to a purse of gold. The treasures inside shift with every step: damp greens, a bruised onion, a turnip that oozes a bit of black rot when squeezed too tightly, and the rib bone that, for now, you treat as a prize worth fighting for. The weight is more hopeful than real. If anything, it presses down, a reminder that your finds, like everything else in this world, must be carefully managed. There is a place you like for this part of the day, a crumbling wall behind the cobbler's shop, half hidden by the refuse pile, but close enough to the street that you can watch the world go by. Here, with your back to the stones, you settle into the time consuming work of sorting your haul. You sit cross legged, sack in your lap, a careful ritual for a task that holds no joy. If anyone watches, they see only another scavenger lost in his own misery, a shape as common as broken pottery. One by one, you lay out your discoveries. Each is given its due, examined from every angle, prodded for rot, sniffed for the telltale sweetness of decay. You know all the tricks. Tap a cabbage. Does it squish or ring hollow? Peel back the outer leaves. Are there bugs? And are they too large to eat? The line between food and garbage is so thin you sometimes laugh at yourself, though never out loud. Laughter draws attention, and attention is best avoided. The bruised onion is a marvel of survival. Its skin, papery and curling, holds just enough flesh to be worthwhile. You cut away the black spots with a shard of pottery, the only blade you can call your own. The carrot, wrinkled and twisted, yields a mouthful of fibrous orange. You rub it against your sleeve, smearing dirt into the cloth. But that is a problem for another time. The rib bone you examine with a tenderness reserved for relics. You scrape it clean, checking for the last vestige of marrow, then set it aside as your evening meal. The turnip, as expected, is less fortunate. Its insides are half liquid, and the smell would send a dog running. You consider, then split it in half. One side is tossed to the gutter, immediately snatched by a passing dog, who gives you a look of pure animal suspicion. The other you keep, reasoning that a few bites of rot can be endured if you are hungry enough. You always are. The rags you have gathered are a different sort of prize. Some will become bandages for your feet, others traded to the ragman for a copper coin or a sliver of tallow. You run your hands over each scrap, checking for lice, for fleas, for that feeling, hard to describe but instantly recognizable, of skin crawling at the thought of infestation. Still, you keep most of them. Rags, like hope, are best saved for worse days. At the bottom of your sack, you find the handful of rusty nails, a bent spoon, a bit of string, and the broken comb with half its teeth missing. These are the day's currency, items you can exchange for something more useful if the right person comes along. The spoon, perhaps, can be bartered for a crust of bread, the nails for a patch to the leaking roof of your shack. You set them aside in a separate pile, a reminder that even trash has its hierarchy. As you work, you keep an eye on the street. The city passes by, indifferent to your struggles. A cart rumbles past, its wheels caked in mud. A priest hurries along, robes gathered to avoid the filth, eyes fixed on the sky, as if divine intervention will save him from the smell. A group of children, clean, well fed, and shouting, throw rocks at a pack of dogs. You see yourself in neither the priest nor the children. You are something else, something the city needs but refuses to acknowledge. You sort in silence, mindful of every noise. A scuffle nearby makes you tense. Is it another scavenger, drawn by the promise of your riches, or just a dog, hungry for the same reason you are? You clutch your sack a little tighter until the sound passes. Trust is a luxury here, traded only by the foolish. A shadow falls across your work. For a moment, you brace for a blow, a rival, a merchant's apprentice with a stick, a city guard looking to extort a coin. But it is only a boy, barely more than a child, barefoot and hollow eyed. He gestures to the turnip scrap in your hand, saying nothing. You hesitate. Sharing means less for you, but there is a code among those who scrape the bottom. You toss him the piece. He catches it, nods, and vanishes without a word. You are left with your meager bounty, reduced by kindness, but no poorer for it. It is always a gamble helping others. Some days it comes back to you, some days it does not. But the hunger is the same, and the city never gives without taking. When the sorting is done, you gather what remains. Food to one side, trade goods to the other, rags bundled for later. You brush crumbs from your lap, ignoring the dirt and the stains that never come out. You tie your sack closed with a knot that only you can untie. Another ritual, another act of control in a world that offers so little of it. For a moment, you allow yourself to imagine a different life, one where sorting the day's finds means organizing riches, not rot. But the thought is as fleeting as sunlight in winter. You push it away, stand, and sling your sack over your shoulder. There is still so much day left, so many battles yet to be fought, so much to lose. You walk back into the street, a shadow among shadows, clutching your treasures as if they might save you. You know better. Nothing is ever saved here. Everything is merely postponed. You know the sounds well. Boots scraping over cobblestone, the jingle of half-rusted mail, the lazy rhythm of men who carry clubs not for defense, but for amusement. You do not need to look up to know. The city watch is making its rounds, faces shining with the confidence that only comes from power, or perhaps from a morning meal you could never imagine. Still, you risk a glance as they approach. They are two today, not three, but it is enough. The city watch does not hate you. That would require acknowledging your existence. Instead, you are a nuisance, a blemish on the face of their city, something to be scraped away whenever convenient. They are not paid enough to care, but just enough to make your life difficult. You make yourself small, busy with your sack, hoping to seem invisible. It rarely works. The taller of the two, a man with a nose bent from too many brawls and eyes too close together, points at you with the lazy air of someone plucking a bug from his sleeve. Oi, he says, his voice thick with boredom and bread. What's in the sack? You do not bother pretending not to hear. Experience has taught you that silence invites suspicion, and suspicion invites pain. Instead, you rise, keeping your face carefully blank, your hands visible. Just scraps, sir, you reply, with a deference you do not feel. Day's work, nothing more. He snorts. The second man, younger, with the beginnings of a mustache and the swagger of a dog with a new bone, leans closer. He pokes the sack with the tip of his club, grinning as if he's uncovered treasure. Scraps, he says. You sure you're not hiding something worth our time? The club jabs again, harder this time. You grit your teeth and try not to flinch. You know the rules. Never argue, never beg, never run, unless you are sure you can outpace them. Today, you do not trust your legs, so you stand your ground. The older watchman loses interest almost immediately, his attention drifting to a woman carrying a basket of eggs, someone worth bothering. The younger one is not so easily distracted. Let's see, he says, and before you can protest, he dumps your sack onto the ground. Your morning's labor, your treasures, spill out for the world to see. A bruised onion, a bit of bread, rags, and a bent spoon, the rib bone you'd saved for supper. He picks up the bone, examines it with exaggerated disgust, then tosses it into the gutter. You watch it land, splattering filth. The loss stings more than any insult. What's this then? He says, holding up the bent spoon as if it were a relic. You planning on stabbing someone with it? He laughs at his own joke. You shake your head. No, sir, you reply, just for eating when there's something to eat. He seems disappointed that you do not rise to his bait. He throws the spoon back into your pile and with a final prod of his club, sends your carrot rolling down the street. The old woman with the twisted back, always lurking nearby, snatches it up in a heartbeat. You do not blame her. You would do the same. The older watchman shouts, and the younger finally loses interest. With a grunt and a smirk, he saunters after his partner, leaving you to collect your scattered belongings. Your hands shake, not from fear, but from anger, humiliation, and the knowledge that it could have been worse. It often is. You gather what you can. The bone is gone, lost to the gutter. The carrot stolen. The bread is now a muddy lump, but you tuck it away anyway. Waste nothing. The spoon you clutch tightly, a symbol of defiance so small as to be almost meaningless. The rags are still yours, at least for now. As you work, others pass by. Some pretend not to see you, others watch with a mixture of pity and relief. Pity that it was you, relief that it was not them. There is no comfort in their gaze. You have learned that solidarity among the desperate is a rare thing, more dangerous than helpful. Everyone is only an inch from the gutter. You remember stories told by those even older than you, tales of a time when the City Watch existed to protect, to serve, to keep the peace. You cannot decide whether they were lying or simply fools. In your experience, the only thing the City Watch protects is its own privilege. Their peace is a heavy silence pressed down upon the throats of the poor. You have seen what happens when someone resists. The memory is not yours alone. A girl, not much older than you, once stood her ground too firmly. The beating was swift, public, and thorough. Afterwards, everyone looked away. You told yourself you would never be that foolish, but you wonder how long you can keep swallowing your pride. Each insult, each theft, each inspection takes a little more from you. You try not to hate them. Hatred is too heavy, and you have enough to carry already. Instead, you tuck your anger deep inside, save it for the nights when the hunger is worse than usual, when the cold seems to seep into your bones, when you need something to remind you that you are still alive. With your things gathered, you move away from the scene. The City Watch will return, as they always do. You wonder if, perhaps, one day they will tire of you and simply beat you senseless for their own amusement. The thought does not frighten you as much as it should. You are tired, and fear is an expensive luxury. You melt back into the alleyways, another piece of the city's detritus, unwanted and unseen. The day is far from over, and you must keep moving. There are still scraps to be found, still fights to be lost, still humiliations to be endured. You tell yourself, as you do every time, that next time you will be more careful, more invisible, more clever. But you know the truth. The city is always watching, even when it pretends not to see. And you, poor, ragged, hungry, will always be exactly what you appear to be. Nothing worth protecting, nothing worth saving, nothing but another mouth to be kept in line. You keep walking, head down, sack clutched tight. The world spins on, indifferent and unkind. It is not the city watch that sends you to the river, though they are as good a reason as any. It is habit, ingrained, hard as old bread, and the knowledge that the river, for all its danger and filth, is a place where even the lowest can sometimes find something worth the trouble. If luck is with you, perhaps a meal. If not, then at least the illusion of purpose. In this city, illusion is often the best you can hope for. The path to the river is a procession of misery. You pass the tannery, where the air sours and burns at the same time, a chemical assault that clings to your hair and skin. The men who work here look almost as ragged as you, their faces streaked with grime, hands swollen and red. You envy them in a way. They have work, even if it eats away their flesh. You have only the promise of rot. The road slopes downward, and the city's refuse seems to flow with you. Drains cut through the streets, emptying into the main artery that is the river, carrying everything the city wants to forget: offal, piss, blood, dead rats, scraps of cloth, broken dreams. The smell grows thicker as you approach. A sour stench that sticks to your teeth, settles in your throat, fills your mind with a kind of buzzing emptiness. Some days, you wonder if you will ever truly wash it off. Some days, you stop caring. When you reach the riverbank, you pause for a moment, surveying the scene. You are not alone. The scavenger's world is a crowded one. At least two others are already there, poking at the water with long sticks, their faces set in grim lines of concentration. A pair of women wade into the shallows, skirts hitched to their knees, hoping to catch a bit of wood or cloth swept down by the night's rain. Farther off, a child, no more than 7, you guess, squats at the edge, fishing for scraps with a hook made from a bent nail. You nod to the others, receive nods in return. No words are exchanged. What is there to say? Good luck? Hope you do not catch plague today. Such things go unsaid. The river takes what it wants, and what it gives is rarely a blessing. You find your usual spot, a flat stone near the remains of an old dock, half submerged and slick with green slime. Here, the city's cast-offs pile up, caught by the current, snagged on roots and timbers. You reach into the muck, pulling free a length of rope. It is slimy, heavy with water, but it may still be useful. You coil it carefully and set it aside. Next, you poke at the floating debris, eyes searching for the telltale signs of something valuable: a glint of metal, the shape of a shoe, a bag that might, just might, contain something edible. Sometimes the river brings gifts. You have found coins before, rarely, and always slick with filth, but coins nonetheless. Once you found a copper pot, battered but whole, traded for a week's worth of bread, and the closest thing to comfort you have ever known. More often, you find nothing but disease: dead fish with eyes like milky glass, bits of rotted meat, splinters of wood sharp enough to draw blood. You have learned to be careful, though caution is a thin shield against desperation. Tubalte. Your luck is neither good nor bad. You fish out a torn sack, much like the one you found earlier, but this one is empty, save for a fistful of mud and a few drowned bugs. You spot a scrap of cloth tangled in a branch, too small for a shirt, but perhaps good enough for bandaging a wound or wrapping a bruised apple. There is also a handful of broken glass, glinting in the weak light. You set it aside. Sometimes the glazier will buy such things, if only to grind them down and start again. While you work, you keep a wary eye on the water. The river is not only a carrier of filth, it is also a place of danger. It is deeper than it looks, the current stronger. More than one scavenger has slipped, or been pushed, or simply lost their footing and vanished beneath the surface. You know the stories: a body found days later, bloated and white, or never found at all. You have seen parents searching for their lost children along this bank, their faces etched with a grief sharper than hunger. There are other dangers too. The city watch sometimes patrols here, looking for trouble or just for someone to blame. They do not need a reason. More often, though, it is the living who are the greater threat. Thieves and bullies haunt the riverside, seeking to take what little you have, certain that no one will miss you. You move with care, keeping your sack close, watching for shadows in the fog. And yet, despite all this, there is a kind of peace here. The noise of the city fades, replaced by the steady lap of water against stone, the occasional call of a gull overhead. You breathe deeply, letting the stench fill your lungs, feeling for a moment as if you belong not to the city, but to the river itself. After all, you are made of the same things, cast off, forgotten, ever moving. A sudden shout breaks your reverie. One of the women where waiting in the shallows has found something, a length of wood, thick and straight. She hauls it out, triumphant, ignoring the cold water soaking her legs. Such a find is precious. It can be burned for warmth, traded for food, or used to repair the leaking roof of her hut. You nod in silent recognition. Even in misery, victory can be found. However small, you decide you have lingered long enough. Your sack is heavier by a few ounces, your hands numb from cold and water. You rise, joints aching, and turn away from the river. The child is still there, still fishing, his patience endless. You wonder how long before he too learns that the river's gifts are rarely free. As you climb back toward the city, you pass the tannery again. The men working there pay you no mind. You are just another ghost in a city full of them, another shape glimpsed in the corner of an eye. Back in the labyrinth of alleys and mud, you pause to take stock of your haul. Rope, cloth, glass, nothing to eat, but perhaps enough to trade. The city is waking fully now, its belly rumbling with hunger. You join the procession of scavengers making their way back to the market, faces set, eyes hard, each carrying their own measure of defeat and hope. The river recedes behind you, carrying away secrets, bodies, and dreams. You wonder, as you always do, what it will bring tomorrow and whether you will still be here to see it. Noon is an hour you greet without enthusiasm. If morning is hunger and hope, noon is fatigue and certainty. Certainty that the day will offer nothing better than what you have already found. Certainty that the world will not grow kinder simply because the sun has climbed higher. And today, like most days, the sun is more a curse than a blessing, searing through the clouds just long enough to bake the city's refuse into something new and even less bearable. You feel it first on your back, a patch of heat where your rags are thinnest. The air grows thick, pressing against your skin like a wet woolen blanket. Your shirt sticks to your body, soaked with sweat and river water and whatever else the morning's labor has gifted you. The breeze, what little there is, carries only the promise of more stench, sour, metallic, rotten, and above all, alive. You sometimes wonder if the city itself is rotting from within, its bowels fermenting, bubbling up through every crack and alley. The world slows down as if even time has been worn out by the sun's relentless glare. Shadows shrink, shrinking you with them. Dogs lie panting in the shade, too weary to bark or beg. The rats, always so bold at dawn, disappear into cracks and holes, leaving the streets to those too desperate or too foolish to pause for the worst of the day's heat. You are both. The refuse piles transform under the sun's gaze. What was merely offensive in the morning becomes unbearable now. The sharp stink of fish bones left in the gutter, the acrid staleness of urine, the syrupy tang of overripe fruit turned to mush, all these mingle with the ever present undertone of sweat, fear, and old wounds. There is no part of the city immune, not the market, where even the wealthiest hurry through with handkerchiefs pressed to their noses, not the alleys, where garbage cooks in the midday light, not even your own nose, which has learned to distinguish 1,000 shades of decay. You do what you must. You keep moving, because to stop is to risk melting into the filth, to become another stain on the stones. You search the corners and crevices where the sun's reach is weakest, hoping for something missed by others, a crust of bread hardened to the point of inedibility, a turnip half mummified by the heat, a rag that, despite the smell, might be worth something to someone even more desperate than you. In one alley, you find a puddle that is not yet dried to a sticky film. The water is opaque, flecked with what might once have been leaves, now just slime. You hesitate, then kneel and dip your fingers, splashing a little on your face. The relief is immediate, though short-lived. The stink of the water clings, but at least it is cool. You drink a mouthful, careful not to swallow too much. Thirst is a worse enemy than filth, or so you tell yourself. Somewhere nearby, a bell rings, high, sharp, insistent. You ignore it. The city rings bells for everything: fire, prayer, meals you will never eat. You watch the others coping in their own ways. A mother fans her child with a battered bonnet. An old man soaks his feet in the gutter, eyes closed, lips moving in silent complaint. Two boys chase a dog for the sheer pleasure of movement, their laughter sharp and desperate. The sun does not discriminate. Misery is a democracy at noon. It is a time for patience. There are no big finds now. Anything left in the heat is suspect, crawling with flies, or already claimed by those less squeamish. You take what you can, scraping mold off bread, breaking the worst rot from a head of cabbage. Sometimes you even search for bones, not for marrow, which is long gone, but for the tiny scraps of meat or gristle left stuck in a crack. In these moments, pride is a memory, and even shame seems like a distant luxury. Every so often, a richer citizen passes by, face twisted with distaste. They step wide around you, holding the edge of a cloak or skirt against the city's filth. You wonder if they see you at all. Perhaps, to them, you are just another unpleasant smell, a patch of moving dirt. You have learned not to look for kindness in their eyes. Pity is as rare as shade and no more nourishing. In the midst of this torpor, you catch the scent of something different: smoke. Not the sharp, chemical tang of the tannery, but the rich, oily smell of meat cooking. You follow your nose, drawn by instinct. At the far end of the alley, you find the source: a vendor grilling scraps over a fire built from broken crates and old boots. The queue is long, a motley parade of the city's hopeful, each clutching a coin or a handful of rags to trade. You wait your turn, feet burning against the hot stones, sweat pouring from your brow. When at last you reach the front, you offer up the rope you found in the river. The vendor sniffs, weighs, then grunts. You receive in exchange a skewer of something charred and unrecognizable, meat, perhaps, or the closest thing to it. You bite in, teeth meeting gristle and sinew. It is hot, salty, and impossibly good. For a moment, you almost forget where you are, but the moment passes. The heat presses in, the city shifts and groans, and you return to your rounds, sack a little lighter, belly a little less empty. You know the respite is temporary, that soon the sun will sink and the city's hunger will return, sharper than ever. By mid afternoon, the heat has bleached the world of all color. The sky hangs low, heavy with the threat of storms that never come. Your thoughts drift, sluggish, circling the same truths: that you are hungry, tired, and alone, that tomorrow will be the same or worse, that survival is an act of endurance, not hope. You settle at last in the shadow of a wall, letting the stones press cool against your back. Around you, the city hums, swelters, and waits. Noon passes as all things do in this place, slowly, painfully, without ceremony or relief. And still you remain, because you must, because there is nothing else. When noon finally crawls past and the city's stones radiate with heat that feels more like punishment than sunlight, you look for the place you call rest. You do not seek comfort, you seek only relief. The difference is everything. In a city that never lets go of its refuse, sometimes the greatest luxury is finding a patch of shade and a moment to pretend the world is not grinding you down to the bone. Your favorite hiding spot is a collapsed wall behind the ruins of an old stable. Once, horses stood here, real horses, with names and bridles, who ate better than you do now. Now it is just a skeleton of blackened beams and broken bricks, the ground churned into dust by decades of boots and hooves and rain. The only witnesses are rats and crows, and they keep their own counsel. To them, you are just another rival for scraps. You settle in the shadow, propping your back against a slab of stone. The warmth seeps into your skin, radiating up from the ground and down from the sky until you can barely tell the difference. You let your sack fall beside you, one hand always on it, out of habit, out of fear, out of simple stubbornness. The city is always ready to take what you have not already lost. Here, in the half light, you can almost believe you are alone. The city's noise fades, replaced by the slow buzzing of flies and the whisper of wind through empty rafters. You close your eyes and try not to listen for footsteps. Try not to count the seconds before someone comes to chase you off, to take your meager haul, to remind you that in this city there is no peace, only pauses. Rest is not sleep. Sleep is a luxury you have not truly known in years, not the deep, untroubled sleep of the wealthy, wrapped in furs, safe behind thick doors. Your sleep is always light, always broken. You have learned to doze with one ear open, to wake at the first sound of movement. Even now, your body is alert, tense, a spring wound too tight to ever really relax. You drift in and out, letting your thoughts wander. Sometimes you remember a different life, or think you do, a face half forgotten, a voice from a dream, the taste of fresh bread with butter melting into the crust. Other times, you imagine a future, a dry room, a roof that does not leak, a meal where you can eat until you are full. Both are fantasies, and you know it. The city has a way of grinding hope down to the same dust that cakes your hands. Every so often, you open your eyes to check your surroundings. A shadow passes, a fellow scavenger, hunched and furtive, glancing your way but not approaching. No one speaks. Words are too valuable to waste on strangers. A dog noses at the edge of your little camp, eyes bright, ribs showing through patchy fur. You throw it a scrap of cloth. It sniffs, then wanders away, searching for something better. You take stock of your injuries. Your feet ache, blisters bursting beneath filthy rags. Your fingers are raw and splintered, nails rimmed in black. The scrape on your knee is swelling, the skin angry and hot. You should clean it, you know, but there is little water and less will. You press a cleanest rag against the wound, hoping to stave off the worst of infection. You have seen what happens when wounds fester: fever, delirium, the long, slow fade. It is not an end you desire, but choice is a thing for other people. Around you, life in the ruins continues. Pigeons coo from the beams above, wings fluttering in the dust. Flies swarm any patch of shannon you leave uncovered. Somewhere, a child is crying, a thin, tired sound, quickly hushed. Farther off, the clang of a distant bell, a reminder that the world moves on, no matter how still you sit. You pass the time by sorting your sack again, fingers lingering over each prize. A bit of rope, stiff but sturdy. The broken spoon, still serviceable if you use your thumb to scoop. The rags, one to bind your foot, one to keep for trade, another to use as a makeshift pillow. The handful of rusty nails, which might fetch a coin if you find the right buyer. Each item is weighed and counted, each one precious for a different reason. There is a certain pride in this small inventory, the feeling that you have managed against all odds to scrape together enough to survive another day. After a while, you hear voices nearby, not close, but not far enough to ignore. Laughter, sharp and mean, carries through the broken walls. You tense, gathering your things, eyes scanning for threats. A gang of boys, faces smeared with dirt, slips past the alley entrance. You recognize one, a would be thief, bold enough to steal from another scavenger, but not yet cruel enough to fight for it. They pass without seeing you, too intent on their own business. You wait until the sound fades before you allow yourself to breathe again. You do not move. Movement is the enemy of rest. You press your head back, close your eyes once more, and let the world shrink to the feel of rough stone against your back, the smell of dust and mold in your nose, the slow beat of your own heart. In this moment, you are safe, or as close to safe as the city allows. Eventually, your stomach reminds you that rest is a privilege purchased by hunger. You cannot afford to waste daylight. The city is not kind to those who linger. You gather your things, every scrap, every crumb, every broken tool, and rise, joints creaking. You take a last look at the ruins, wishing you could stay, knowing you cannot. You step back into the sun, back into the noise and the heat and the stink, your sack over your shoulder, your hope packed away with your belongings. Rest is over and the day is waiting. You remind yourself, as you do every time, that rest is not for the likes of you, not in this city, not in this life. You walk on, blending with the shadows, another ghost among ruins. Rest over, the world pulls you back into its hungry jaws. If there is a rhythm to the city, it is this: gather, sort, rest, and trade, then do it all again. As if hope is a wheel, you must turn with every tired limb just to keep from being crushed beneath it. You shoulder your sack and join the slow parade of scavengers drifting toward the market, each clutching their finds, each wearing the same guarded look. The air is thicker now, heavy with afternoon heat, and the city's noises grow sharper as the day pushes on. Trading is an art, or at least an act of desperation elevated by necessity. You know every trader's face, every stall where a rag or a rusty spoon might be worth a crumb. There are no honest trades here, only bargains struck between the wretched and the shrewd. The market square is a world apart, loud and fast and sharp edged, full of smells and sounds that both tempt and repel. For those like you, it is the center of everything, a place where the right scrap can mean the difference between life and death, or at least between an empty stomach and one that aches a little less. The first stall you approach is run by an old woman, bent double and wrapped in a shawl the color of old bones. Her fingers are crooked from years of clutching coins and counting losses. She eyes you over the rim of her spectacles, sharp as a sparrow. "What have you got today?" she asks, voice dry as dust. You show her your rope, the broken spoon, the handful of nails. She takes each in turn, poking and prodding as if searching for hidden gold. Her nose wrinkles at the rope, but she keeps it. The nails, she says, are almost worth melting down. The spoon, she decides, might fetch a bite for a beggar with no pride. You know better than to argue. She holds out a coin, barely a coin, more whole than metal, and a heel of bread so hard you could knock out a tooth with it. You take both. She keeps your fines, adding them to a growing pile of other people's hopes. Next comes the ragman. He is a thin, nervous man with ink stains on his fingers and the suspicious eyes of a rat who has learned to expect traps. Rags, he tells you, are not what they used to be. Everyone wants cloth, nobody wants to pay. Still, he weighs your bundle in his hands, picking out the cleanest. He offers you a sliver of tallow and a muttered blessing. You accept the tallow. Light is precious, and a bit of fat might save you later. You move on, picking your way through the crowd. The bread merchant glares at you as you pass, but you hold out your hard-won coin. He sighs, tears off a crust from a loaf that was stale yesterday, and drops it into your palm. Do not come back until you have real money, he mutters, but you are already moving on, the bread hidden away like a secret. Not everything you carry is meant for the stalls. Sometimes you trade with people like yourself, other scavengers, always hungry for something new. You find a young woman with bandaged hands, eyes swollen from crying or lack of sleep. She needs rope. You need hope. You offer a strip, and in return, she gives you a slice of dried apple, shriveled but sweet. You savor it, letting the flavor linger on your tongue as long as possible. As the market thrums, you see the delicate ecosystem at work. The traders, fat and sharp-eyed, the scavengers, lean and desperate, the guards, always circling, always watching for a reason to remind everyone who is really in charge. Deals are struck and broken with every breath. A rag here, a button there, a promise of repayment that will never be honored. You keep your head down and your sack close, trying to slip through the cracks rather than be caught in them. Sometimes trade means humiliation. One merchant, notorious for his cruelty, holds up your rags to the light, laughs, and throws them in the mud. Worthless, he spits. You stoop to pick them up, pride burning hotter than hunger, but you say nothing. He drops a single copper at your feet, a gesture meant more as insult than charity. You take it anyway. Dignity, you remind yourself, is an expensive luxury in a world where bread costs your soul. With every transaction, your sack grows lighter. The tallow, the heel of bread, the dried apple, and a pair of battered gloves. Your day's winnings. Not enough to feast, but enough to live. You watch as others barter and beg, some luckier, some not. You see a boy leave the market empty-handed, tears cutting clean streaks through the dirt on his face. You do not look away, but you do not help either. There is no room for saints among the hungry. By late afternoon, the crowd begins to thin. Traders pack up their goods, sweeping the ground for dropped coins and forgotten scraps. The city watch returns, their eyes sweeping the square for trouble. You linger at the edge, counting your gains, measuring the distance between hunger and survival. The market's noise fades, replaced by the low murmur of those left behind. You eat your crust of bread, gnawing it slowly, letting every bite dissolve in your mouth. It is dry, tasteless, but it is food. You save the tallow for later, thinking of the darkness to come. The coin, such as it is, you hide in your boot, a talisman against tomorrow's uncertainty. There is no satisfaction in these trades, only relief. You have learned not to expect more. The city takes and takes, and what it gives only grudgingly. You are not grateful, but you are not empty. Not yet. As dusk approaches, you gather what is left, tie your sack tight, and leave the market behind. The city is never finished with you, but for now, you have earned the right to keep moving. Every coin, every crumb, every scrap has been paid for in sweat and shame, and the knowledge that tomorrow will be the same. You do not look back. You know what is behind you, the traders, the market, the hunger. You walk forward, clutching your bread and your battered pride toward the alleys and the dark. Tomorrow, the wheel will turn again, and so will you. Evening drags its shadows long across the city, and you feel the rhythm of the place shift. Where the afternoon was a sluggish crawl through sweat and bargaining, dusk is a tightening, a sense of everything pulling in. The crowds thin, the traders pack away their fortunes, and the city's animals come into their own. You hear the change before you see it. Low, guttural growls, a chorus of barking, the snap of teeth in the dark. Dogs, not pets. Nobody in your part of the city has the means for such a luxury. These are the city's true survivors, as lean and cunning as any human. They move in packs, scavenging, fighting, always hungry. In many ways, they are your rivals, and sometimes you suspect your betters. They are stronger, faster, and never troubled by pride or memory. Hunger is their only master, and it is a whip they obey without question. As you wind through the alleys, sacks slung over one shoulder, you keep your eyes open and your steps light. You know the signs. A sudden hush in the bird song, the way the rats vanish, the prickling on the back of your neck that tells you you are being watched. Sometimes you catch the glint of eyes in the gloom, or see the shape of a tail slipping into shadow. The city is thick with dogs, and dusk is their hour. The first time it happens, you are not prepared. You have just found a crust of bread. Hard, yes, and flecked with mold, but still bread, and you are cradling it like a treasure, already imagining the taste. Then the growl, deep and close, a shiver of sound. You turn, and there they are, four of them, rangy, ribs showing, fur patchy and raw. Their eyes are yellow and empty of mercy. You do not run. Running is an invitation. a signal that you are prey. Instead, you stand your ground, holding your sack close and your breath closer. The dogs circle, their hunger palpable, their teeth bared in grins that hold no warmth. You meet their gaze, willing yourself to seem bigger, braver, less edible. For a long moment, nothing happens. The pack's leader, a big bitch with a torn ear and a limp, steps closer. She sniffs the air, eyes locked on your bread. You do not blink. Then, suddenly, she lunges, snapping at your hand. You yank it back, losing a crumb but saving the rest. The pack surges forward, teeth flashing. You swing your sack, catching one across the nose. It yelps, but the others are undeterred. You retreat slowly, never turning your back, always keeping the bread between you and them. Every step is a negotiation. Give too much, and they will take everything. Fight too hard, and they may decide you are more trouble than you are worth. It is a delicate dance, and one you have learned through bitter experience. Eventually, they give up. Hunger drives them, but so does caution. There are easier meals to be had: a child left alone, a drunk too slow to notice, the fresh corpse of a rat bloated by the river. The pack melts away, slipping into the darkness like ghosts. You breathe again, heart pounding, sweat cold on your skin. You are not always so lucky. Some nights, the dogs are more desperate, or you are more tired, less careful. Once, they caught you off guard and snatched a whole loaf from your hands. Another time, you woke to find your meager stores torn open, the best of your finds gone, the rest scattered and trampled. There is no justice here, only the endless tally of what is lost and what is kept. The city, of course, does nothing. Dogs are as much a part of its fabric as mud and misery. The rich hire boys to chase them away with sticks, but in your alleys, they rule. Some say the dogs are smarter than the people. They never starve for long, never trust without reason, never waste a moment on regret. You learn from them. You keep your food close, sleep with your sack under your head, wake at the slightest sound. You fashion a stick from a broken broom handle, keep it sharpened and close at hand. It is not much of a weapon, but it makes you feel less helpless, and sometimes that is enough. Still, there are moments of uneasy peace. Sometimes you catch the dogs resting in a patch of sun, bellies full, eyes half closed. In those moments, you feel a kind of kinship, a shared understanding of what it means to survive in a world that has no room for softness. You wonder if, given the chance, you would become like them: fierce, wild, unafraid, or perhaps you already have. Tonight, the city is restless. The moon rises, pale and thin, casting strange shadows across the stones. You find a corner to sleep, sheltered from the wind, your sack cradled in your arms. You hear the dogs in the distance, their voices rising and falling in the night. You listen, counting the gaps between barks, trying to read the city's moods: hunger, fear, the slow turning of the wheel. You drift into something like sleep, half dreaming of teeth and claws, of running and being chased, of standing your ground and losing everything anyway. You wake at dawn, stiff and sore, your bread gone, but your stick still in hand. The city is already alive with movement, the dogs already searching for their next meal. You rise, brush the dirt from your clothes, and shoulder your sack. The day waits, full of new dangers, new chances, new losses. You walk on, never looking back, never slowing down. The dogs watch you go, their eyes bright in the morning light. In the city, everyone is hungry, and only the strongest or the luckiest make it through. As evening deepens and the city exhales the heat of the day, you sense a change in the air. It is not just the cooling of the wind or the lowering of the sky, but something subtler, a tingle of anticipation and dread that passes from scavenger to scavenger like a shiver. Rain is coming. Every bone in your body, every ache in your old wounds tells you so. You have learned to trust these omens because the city's weather is as merciless as its people. The rain is both blessing and curse. For some, it brings relief, dampening the stench, driving the worst of the flies back into hiding, washing a little of the filth from the streets. For others, it spells disaster. The alleys turn to rivers of mud and rot. The gutters overflow, and every pile of precious garbage is swept away or drowned. Whatever you hope to find tomorrow will be gone, carried off to the river, or trampled to nothing. You have learned to hate the rain even as you sometimes pray for it. Tonight, you watch the sky, peering through broken shingles and twisted rafters at clouds heavy and low. Lightning flickers in the distance, and the air tastes of metal. All around, the city tenses. The dogs slink into doorways, shaking water from their coats. The rats vanish into cracks in the stones. You see mothers hurriedly herding children into what passes for shelter, pressing rags and old boards over leaking roofs, muttering curses at the sky. The old woman with the twisted back wraps herself tighter in her shawl and rocks on her stoop, eyes fixed on the horizon. Even the drunks sober up when the thunder rolls. You have your own preparations to make. You gather your sack, check the knot, and shift your things higher on your back to keep them out of the worst of the wet. There is no home to retreat to, only a patch of wall where the roof mostly holds, a space you share with three others when the rain is especially cruel. Tonight, you hope they have found someplace better, but you know it was for fools. The first drops fall with a soft, mocking rhythm. They splatter against stone and flesh alike, each one cold enough to remind you how thin your rags truly are. Soon the rain comes harder, drumming on the city's bones, beating down the last of the dust. You pull your knees to your chest, wrapping your arms tight, willing yourself to disappear into the shadows. You know better than to sleep when it rains. The city changes in the wet. The water washes away the lines that separate filth from treasure, alley from gutter, home from ruin. Whole piles of garbage can vanish in an hour, swept into the sewers or out into the river. Anything left unguarded is lost. Sometimes, when the rain is especially fierce, even the walls themselves crumble. You have seen whole rooms collapse, spilling their meager contents into the street, lives washed away in a heartbeat. The city remembers nothing. It simply fills the hole and keeps moving. There is a particular misery to the rain. Cold seeps into your bones, turning every bruise into a fresh ache, every cut into a burning reminder of your own frailty. You shiver uncontrollably, teeth chattering, muscles knotting with the effort of holding yourself together. The wet finds every gap in your clothing, every hole in your shoes, every place where you thought you were safe. There is no dignity in it, only survival, and even that feels far away. You are not alone in your suffering. Around you, others huddle in doorways, under carts, wherever a sliver of shelter can be found. The lucky ones have blankets or cloaks to share, most do not. The children cry, the old ones moan, and the rest grit their teeth and wait for the rain to end. Some try to sleep, curled in miserable balls, but you know better. You have heard stories of those who never wake, their bodies too cold, too tired, too empty to last until morning. Still, the rain has its uses. It washes new things into the open, bits of cloth caught on a broken fence, a chunk of wood knocked loose from a crumbling beam, the glint of metal where a drain overflows. You keep your eyes open, scanning for any opportunity, even as you curse the water running down your back. Sometimes you find a treasure, a coin trapped in a crack, a shoe with life left in it, a lump of coal swept from a merchant's cellar. But more often, you lose what little you have managed to collect. A single night of rain can undo a week's hard labor. The city's mood darkens with the storm. The watchmen disappear, unwilling to brave the wet for the sake of discipline. Thieves grow bolder, knowing that the noise and chaos of the rain will cover their crimes. Fights break out over the smallest scraps of shelter. You keep your stick close, your back to the wall, and hope to go unnoticed. As the hours drag by, the rain slows to a drizzle. You are soaked through, numb and aching, your belly rumbling with hunger that sleep will not answer. You check your sack, find it lighter than before, wonder what you have lost. Perhaps nothing. Perhaps something you will only miss when the sun rises. You do not bother to mourn it. Loss is the city's only guarantee. When the storm finally passes, the world is changed. The streets glisten, slick with mud and refuse. The piles of garbage you once counted on have shifted, merged, vanished. You will have to start over, relearn the city's new shape, hunt for the places where fortune or someone else's bad luck has left something behind. You rise, bones stiff and heavy, and shake the water from your sack. Around you, others do the same, faces drawn and gray in the watery light. The city groans, stretching itself awake once more, preparing for another day of hunger and fear and endless grinding work. Rain or shine, you have learned, the city always wins. The only question is how much you are willing to lose before morning. Night in the city does not fall all at once. It leaks in, a slow, sticky tide that fills every alley and hollow with shadows and secrets. The rain has left its mark, rivers of filth winding through the gutters, pools of black water where the ground sags, piles of rubbish collapsed and swollen with the weight of the storm. Everything smells sharper, fouler, as if the rain has not washed away the stink, but only brought it to the surface, made it bolder, more insistent. For a scavenger, evening is a time of hope and dread in equal measure. Hope, because night is when the day's real treasures might be cast aside, when the servants of the wealthy sweep their leftovers into the street, when the kitchens empty their pots and the tables their bones. Dread, because the worst piles, the ones with a chance of holding something edible, are also the ones that reek with a force that feels almost alive, that coil and cling in your nostrils, that make your eyes water and your stomach clench in protest. Hunger is a more powerful force than disgust, but not by much. You return to your usual circuit, moving with caution and practice, your stick in one hand, sack over your shoulder, keeping an eye on every shadow. The rain has changed everything. The familiar heaps are transformed, some vanished entirely, others grown to monstrous proportions. You know better than to trust appearances. The best scraps often lie beneath the worst, and you have learned to dig with patience, using your stick to prod, to lift, to push aside the layers of refuse until you find something that does not squirm or ooze. The stench is different here. Wet rot, the heavy sweetness of fermenting fruit, the sour bite of spoiled milk, the acrid ghost of old urine, and the unmistakable tang of blood. You force yourself to breathe shallowly, to ignore the way your throat tightens, the way bile rises and threatens to choke you. There is no dignity in this, but there is a kind of skill. You have learned to work quickly, to keep your hands moving, to trust your nose to warn you when something is truly dangerous. The shimmer of green on meat, the blue-black fuzz that grows in the damp, the slippery gleam that means the thing you have just touched is not, in fact, dead. Tonight, you are not alone. Other scavengers drift in and out of the darkness, silent as ghosts. Some nod in recognition, others avoid your gaze, focused on their own search. You know most by face, if not by name. A thin man with a broken shoe, a girl whose hair is cropped short against lice, a woman with a child tied to her back. There is an unspoken agreement. What you find is yours, unless someone stronger decides otherwise. Fights are rare, but not unheard of. Desperation makes everyone dangerous. You find a likely heap near the back wall of a tavern, half hidden beneath the shattered remnants of a crate. You prod it with your stick, stirring up a cloud of flies, then dig in. Your fingers are numb from the rain, but you work by feel, sifting through layers of slimy bread, wilted greens, bones picked clean, and bones not picked at all. Once you find a piece of cheese, soft and crawling, but you scrape off the worst and slip it into your sack. You have eaten worse. Another time, you uncover a handful of boiled peas, half mashed but mostly whole. You count this as a victory. Sometimes you strike something harder, a bit of metal, the corner of a box. You lift it free, careful of splinters, and find a tin cup with a hole in the bottom. Worthless to most, but you know a man who melts metal for candle molds. Into the sack it goes. You keep digging, deeper, finding nothing but rags and broken crockery. Then, at last, a crust of bread so soggy it falls apart in your hands. You squeeze out the worst of the water, break off the mold, and tuck it away for later. All around you, the city shifts and mutters. Somewhere a door slams. Somewhere else, a voice rises in anger, sharp and quick. You hear laughter, high and wild, and the sound of boots splashing through puddles. The city is not safe at night, not for anyone, least of all for those who live on its margins. You keep your stick ready, your eyes open, and your ears tuned for any sign of trouble. The night is full of hazards. Besides people, rats are bold in the darkness, swarming over the piles you search, fighting you for every scrap. You learn to work around them, to share the bounty when you must, to slap them away when you can. More than once, you have felt their teeth against your skin, sharp and hungry. You wash the bites when you can, but infection is a constant risk. You have seen what happens to those who are less lucky: fever, delirium, wounds that will not heal. In this city, even a rat bite can be a death sentence. There are other dangers, too. Sometimes the piles hide broken glass, nails, needles discarded by the apothecary. Your hands bear the scars of 100 careless moments, each one a lesson you had to learn twice. Tonight, you are lucky. Only a shallow cut, quickly bandaged with a bit of your precious rag. You work your way through heap after heap, sifting, sorting, trading disgust for the promise of fullness. Hunger is always present, a low hum in your belly, a constant ache. You do not expect to find a feast, only enough to make the night bearable. Tonight, you do better than most. By the time you are finished, your sack holds a bit of cheese, a handful of peas, the tin cup, and a strip of something you hope is bacon. It is enough. You step back from the heap, breathing deeply despite the smell. Your arms are tired, your back aches, and your legs tremble from crouching. The city is quiet now, the worst of the storm past, the worst of the night still to come. You glance at the moon, pale behind shifting clouds, and wonder what it would be like to sleep without fear. For now, you are grateful for what you have managed to find. The city has not beaten you, not yet. You shoulder your sack and melt into the darkness, another shadow among shadows, ready to face whatever the night might hold. Fatigue is not a visitor in your life. It is the background music, the constant murmur beneath every action, every step. It is there when you wake, coiled in your gut as hunger, sitting on your shoulders as cold, living in your bones as the memory of 1,000 wasted mornings. But evening brings a new level of exhaustion, the kind that makes your vision swim, your limbs feel made of lead, and your mind dull and gray as the sky before a storm. You hardly notice the filth anymore. There is nothing romantic about a scavenger's hands. You look at yours as if they belong to someone else, fingers swollen, nails cracked and blackened, knuckles raw, skin mapped by ancient blisters, and new ones just forming. Every fingertip stings. Every movement is accompanied by a sharp or dull ache. The cuts are fresh, some bleeding, others already crusted over with dirt. There is a kind of art to the way your hands accumulate wounds, as if you are carving your story into your own flesh. If there is an afterlife, you hope it has soap and warm water. Tonight, you have managed to avoid the worst of the fights, both with people and with animals, but the garbage itself is never kind. Broken glass, bent nails, the splinters of wood from crates kicked apart in anger or carelessness. These things do not care how tired you are. You try to be careful, but careful is just another word for slow, and slow means hungry. So you dig deep, ignore the pain, wipe the blood on your rags, and keep moving. Blinding fatigue is its own kind of madness. There are moments when you forget where you are, when you lose track of time and space, when your body moves on its own, following the rhythm of the search. Your mind floats, light as the mist rising from the gutters, thinking of nothing at all or of everything at once. A bed that does not stink of mildew, bread that does not shatter your teeth, hands that do not hurt. Sometimes you wonder if you are sleepwalking through your own life, and if so, whether waking up would be better or worse. You try to keep count of the cuts, if only as a distraction. 5 new ones tonight, not counting the old wound on your palm that will not close. That one throbs with a life of its own, angry and hot. You squeeze it, watching a bead of pus ooze out, and grimace. The last time you saw a wound like this, it ended badly. But you are not that unlucky, you tell yourself. Not yet. You press a bit of cheesecloth against it, torn from the cleanest rag you own, and tie it tight. The ache is a reminder that you are still alive. Some people talk of fatigue as a gentle thief, a slow draining of strength. For you, it is a mugger in a dark alley, a sudden blow that leaves you reeling. You feel it in your legs, heavy and useless, in your back, bent and twisted, in your eyes, burning with the effort of staying open. Your head droops, chin sinking to your chest, then jerks up as a shout or a footstep jolts you awake. You cannot afford to sleep yet. Not here, not now. The night belongs to those with sharper teeth and lighter feet. You remember a time long ago when tiredness was a thing you could cure with sleep. Now, sleep is another battleground, another place where comfort is measured in minutes, in the safety of the shadows, in the hope that nothing worse finds you first. You tell yourself you will rest soon, just a few more heaps, just one more lucky find. It is a lie, but a necessary one. Other scavengers share this exhaustion, though few speak of it. The thin man with the broken shoe limps past, his face a mask of pain. The girl with the cropped hair stares at her hands, flexing her fingers as if willing them to work. Even the woman with the child on her back moves slower now, weighed down by more than just her burden. There is a solidarity in misery, but it is a fragile thing, easily shattered by need. You catch your reflection in a puddle, pale, hollow eyed, more shadow than substance. You make a face at yourself, lips twisted in something that is almost a smile, almost a snarl. You laugh softly, a sound lost in the night. If anyone heard, they would think you mad. Maybe you are. As you stagger on, you notice the way the city changes under fatigue. Sounds blur together, lights smear across your vision. Every movement feels distant, underwater. You lose track of your finds, have to check your sack to remember what you have and what you lost. The sack feels heavier than it should, or maybe your arms are just too tired to care. Finally, you reach the place where you plan to sleep, a corner, half sheltered, dry enough to avoid the worst of the night air. You set your sack down, collapse beside it, and stretch your hands out in front of you, studying them in the weak moonlight. They are ugly things, scarred and battered, but they are yours. You flex your fingers, wince at the pain, then wrap them in what passes for a bandage and tuck them under your head. Sleep comes in fits, each time, interrupted by the throb of your wounds, the twitch of your legs, the hunger in your belly. You drift, not truly resting, but at least not working. The city hums around you, alive with 1,000 threats and a few small comforts. You dream of clean water, of soft beds, of hands that do not hurt. You wake with a start, heart pounding, only to find nothing has changed. The fatigue is still there, waiting for you. The cuts are still bleeding. The night is not yet over, and tomorrow will bring more of the same. But you are still here. For now, that is enough. Dawn comes in gray smears, thin light leaking through a sky that never quite clears. The world feels damp, heavy, reluctant to move. You sit up, flex your aching hands, and count your fingers, an old habit, unnecessary but comforting in its way. All present and accounted for, even if none are whole. You roll your shoulders, shake off the night's stiffness, and listen for the familiar sounds. The shuffle of feet, the cough of someone older than hope, the low murmur of voices. It is time for the morning congregation of your people, the ones the city pretends not to need. You are not alone in your trade, though you might wish otherwise. There is a whole guild of you, though no one would ever call it that out loud. A loose collection of the city's most persistent failures, united by necessity and divided by the need to eat. There are no uniforms, no dues, no shared secrets, only a mutual understanding. Survive, but try not to be the reason someone else starves. You find the usual gathering near the old fountain at the square's edge. The fountain is long dry, filled with pebbles, bones, and the detritus of years, but it serves as a landmark, a sort of neutral territory. The air is thick with smoke and the breath of too many bodies, all pressed together by invisible threads of want and weariness. Old Tom is there, as always, his legs stretched out in front of him, twisted at impossible angles from an accident nobody quite remembers. He greets you with a grunt, then returns to staring at his own feet, as if hoping they will someday do as they are told. Next to him is Marie, her child wrapped against her chest, eyes shadowed but sharp. She nods in your direction, one hand already busy picking at a scab. The twins arrive together, silent as ever, moving with a grace that borders on eerie. They have a reputation for luck, which means everyone gives them space. Luck in your world can be catching, but it is more often a curse. You share the news of the night in short bursts. Who was beaten by the watch? Who found a loaf of bread behind the bakery? Who lost a boot to the dogs? There is a kind of ritual to it, a checking in that serves to remind everyone that you are still here, that you still matter, even if only as a name on a tongue. Someone tells a joke, and it is just funny enough to draw out a weak laugh, quickly smothered by the morning's cold. Trades are done quietly, with nods and glances more than words. You offer the tin cup you found to one of the twins, who slips you a rag and half a dried fish in exchange. Marie has come across a candle stub, precious treasure, and she divides it, giving a sliver to Tom, who mutters his thanks without looking up. The twins trade a broken comb for a hunk of cheese, and the circuit continues, each deal as careful and measured as any merchant's. There are unwritten rules to these exchanges. No one cheats, at least not openly. Grudges last longer than shoes, and a reputation for theft is a death sentence carried out by slow starvation or the sharp end of someone's stick. Generosity, though rare, is remembered. You once shared a crust of bread with Marie when her child was feverish, and she has not forgotten. The twins once scared off a pack of dogs for you, and you, in turn, watched their heap while they slept. In a world without law, trust is as valuable as gold and twice as fragile. Conversations wander, as they always do, to the rumors that fill the empty spaces in your bellies. Some say the plague is returning, carried in by the rats. Others whisper of a new lord, rumored to be crueler than the last. Someone claims to have seen the baker's daughter sneaking coins to a crippled beggar. It is all speculation, half hope, half fear, but it passes the time, fills the silence that would otherwise choke you. You look around at your colleagues, see their stories written in scars and smiles, in missing teeth and careful glances. Tom, who was once a cobbler, still mutters about shoes in his sleep. Marie, whose husband vanished during a winter so cold even the dogs froze, guards her child as fiercely as she guards her food. The twins' past is a mystery. Some say they were born in the gutter, others that they once lived in a house with a roof. It does not matter. Here, The present is the only thing that counts. Sometimes newcomers arrive, drawn by hunger or driven out of safer trades by misfortune. You spot one today, a young man with hands too clean, eyes too bright. He is nervous, jumping at every sound, clutching his sack like it is a life raft. The group watches him with silent calculation. He is a potential rival, or maybe just a new face to share in the misery. No one speaks to him at first, letting him find his own place. He will learn or he will leave. After a while, the gathering dissolves. People drift off to their corners, to their roots, to the endless task of survival. You linger a moment longer, watching the others go. There is comfort in the routine, in the knowledge that you are not alone, that your pain is shared, if not lessened, by the company of others who know it as intimately as you do. You gather your things and move on. The city waits, as hungry as ever, and the day will not slow for your sake. But for a brief moment, in the company of your fellow failures, you feel almost human. It is a small thing, but it is enough. By midday, the city will have swallowed you all again, each scavenger disappearing into the alleys, the ruins, the dark places between hope and hunger. You take a last look at the fountain, a last deep breath of air thick with secrets and suffering, and step into the world, ready to begin the next round. Because you must, because there is no choice, because this is the life you know. If fatigue is your daily companion, then disease and vermin are the bedfellows you never chose and cannot escape. You cannot remember a day without some new itch, bite, sore, or feverish ache gnawing at your insides. It is a constant, a sort of baseline discomfort that the city layers onto its lowest with endless enthusiasm. Sometimes you think the filth is alive, crawling from street to skin, from skin to blood, as if the city itself is trying to digest you. It begins with the little things: a scratch that refuses to heal, a rash that blooms red and angry along your wrist. Fleas and lice are simply facts of existence. You stop bothering to pick them out. Why bother when there are always more? They burrow into the seams of your rags, nest in the lining of your sack, hatch in the folds behind your ears and knees. At night, you can feel them moving, a ceaseless migration that no scratching can end. You sometimes watch others, those even poorer or more desperate, sitting in the market square in the brief sunlight, their fingers busy in their own hair, hunting for the tiny black seeds of misery. There is no shame, there is only necessity. Bedbugs are another horror, hiding in the cracks of beams and under every patch of straw. You know the feeling, waking to 100 tiny bites, the skin swollen and raw, an itch that drives you mad until you bleed. There are tricks: washing your rags in the river, hanging them in the smoke from someone's fire, slathering your skin in rancid fat or ashes. None truly work. You see the same torments written on the faces of your colleagues, everyone red-eyed from lost sleep, scratching at bites that never seem to heal. And then there are the bigger pests: rats, Fat and bold, with slick fur and black eyes that glint with a kind of contempt, are both competition and threat. You wake to find them gnawing at your stores, your sack, your fingers, if you are careless. You have seen what their bites can do. Swollen flesh, purple streaks, fever that comes on fast and leaves you weak and shaking, if it leaves you at all. People talk in whispers about the plague, about death creeping through the city on tiny feet. You try not to think about it. You try not to remember the faces of those who coughed themselves empty, then vanished from your circle of colleagues forever. Disease is everywhere. A cough turns to blood. A cut turns to rot. A fever burns through a family and leaves only silence behind. You have learned to recognize the signs: the glazed eyes, the too bright cheeks, the sudden quiet in a once crowded corner. You steer clear when you can, but distance is a privilege. Some nights you huddle with others for warmth and know that at least one of you will wake sicker than you were. Every public well is a gamble, every scrap of food a possible poison. You have eaten bread with blue mold, meat with green fur, fruit crawling with worms. Sometimes it stays down. Sometimes you spend the night doubled over, shivering and sweating, praying to gods you barely believe in for the pain to end. There are stories of a wise woman on the edge of the city who sells cures, but her price is too high. A week's worth of scraps, a favor that might cost your life, a secret you cannot afford to tell. You do what you can. You rub herbs on wounds when you can find them, though half the time you cannot tell if they help or only distract you. You try to boil water, but fuel is precious and smoke draws attention. Mostly you ignore the pain, push through the aches, hope that tomorrow will not be worse. Children are the most vulnerable. You have seen the smallest ones with bellies swollen from worms, faces pale and eyes too big. Their cries are thin and hopeless, the kind that makes your teeth hurt to hear. Mothers smear mud on fevers, tie rags soaked in river water around wrists, hope that the city's filth will spare them. It rarely does. The old and the very young die often and quickly. You think sometimes of what it would be like to be clean, to wake up without a new bite, to drink water that does not taste of rust and rot, to eat food without wondering what is growing inside it. The thought is almost funny, in a dark way. You laugh, and the sound is as rough as your skin. Yet, even in this, there are moments of luck. Once, a merchant dropped a jug of cheap wine in the street, and you managed to scoop up enough to clean a cut. Another time, someone threw away a lump of beeswax, and you traded it for a handful of dried lavender. For a few nights, your skin smelled almost sweet, and the lice seemed fewer. But such gifts are rare and always fleeting. The city's diseases are democratic. They visit rich and poor alike, though the poor die quicker and with less fuss. Sometimes you hear the church bells toll for a wealthy merchant's child, see the doctors parade through the streets in their beaked masks, scattering herbs and prayers. You watch from a distance, scratching at your own sores, and wonder how much money it takes to keep death at bay. You know the answer more than you will ever see. There is a bitter camaraderie in illness. When the fever hits you, as it does every few months, your colleagues will watch you with wary sympathy. No one offers help. You have nothing to trade but your own sickness, but they will sit a little closer, share a bit of their luck, swap a joke or a story to pass the time. If you live, you owe them nothing. If you die, someone else will claim your sack and your shoes, and life will continue as it always does. So you scratch and cough and limp and itch, and when the pain grows too much, you bite your lip and keep moving. The city will not wait for you to heal. It never has. And neither will its parasites. There are many ways to be invisible in this city, and just as many ways to become the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. As a scavenger, you spend most days hoping for the first and dreading the second. You are a shadow in the market, a shape that appears and disappears in alleyways and near refuse heaps. The city's respectable folk do not see you, or at least they pretend not to, unless you step too close, unless something goes missing, unless there is blame to be assigned and no one better in sight. But in truth, you are never truly unseen. The city gossips about you, talks behind dirty hands and over garden walls. Whispers chase you through the streets. Every step you take, every scrap you lift, is noted, twisted, and carried along by the current of rumor that keeps the city's blood pumping. You hear the stories, even if you wish you could shut your ears to them. You are accused of many things, most of them more interesting than the truth. You are blamed for the smell, for the rats, for the sickness that gnaws its way through the poor quarters each year. Children are warned that you will steal them in the night, carry them off to be boiled down into tallow, or feed them to the rats in exchange for copper. Whenever someone's washing goes missing from a line, or a loaf of bread vanishes from a window, it is a scavenger who is at fault. Never mind that the dogs are smarter thieves, or that hunger sharpens every stomach in this city. Sometimes you listen, half hidden, as merchants swap stories at the market stalls. They talk of scavengers as if you are wild beasts, dirty, cunning, liable to spread filth and misfortune wherever you go. Some recall a time when the city was cleaner, when there were fewer of your kind, though no one can quite agree when that was. One woman insists she saw a group of you working together to rob a priest, while another swears you are witches, spreading curses with every rag and bone you touch. The baker's apprentice claims to have seen a scavenger bite the head off a live rat, while the tanner's wife laughs and says, "If only they could, maybe then there would be fewer rats." There are stories about you in the taverns, too, where men drink away their wages and hunt for something to blame for their own failings. You hear them sometimes as you pass by the doorways, the words slurred but clear. Watch your purse. Those rag pickers will steal it right off your belt. My cousin's cousin lost a whole goose to one of them last week. They'll turn up dead one day, floating in the river with the rest of the trash. The laughter that follows is mean, sharp-edged, as if the only comfort is knowing that at least someone else has it worse. Even the city's children have their own stories. They dare each other to run up and touch you, to snatch a rag from your sack, to spit in your path or call you names. Sometimes they throw stones, careful never to aim too well. After all, they might end up scavengers themselves one day, and fate is spiteful in a place like this. You ignore them when you can, outstare them when you must, and curse them under your breath when they finally run away, shrieking with laughter. Of course, not all the rumors are cruel. Some are simply sad, or hopeful, or just plain wrong. There is talk that scavengers know the city better than anyone, that you have secret tunnels, hidden doors, maps drawn in grease and blood. Some say you are lucky, that the gods smile on those who live on the edge, because they have nothing left to lose. Others whisper that you see things no one else does, that you can find lost treasures, overhear secrets, witness crimes. Sometimes the rich and desperate will even seek you out, slipping coins into your hand in exchange for a favor, a message delivered, a question answered. For a moment, you are worth something more than your weight in garbage. You learn to live with these stories, to carry them like you carry everything else, awkwardly, resentfully, with a sense of humor as brittle as old bread. There is no use denying what everyone thinks they know. If you try to defend yourself, they only add liar to your list of crimes. If you are silent, they imagine even worse. Among your own, rumors and gossip are a different beast. You and your fellow scavengers share stories of the city's hypocrisy, how the merchant who shouts thief at you is the first to cheat his customers, how the priest who preaches charity will not spare a crust for a starving child. You tell tales of the rich woman who left her necklace in the gutter and then accused every poor soul in the market of stealing it until her own lapdog was found, gnawing it beneath the porch. You laugh together, bitter and tired, at the city's blindness. Still, gossip has its uses. Sometimes it is a warning. Watch out for the new guard. He likes to beat first and ask questions later. Avoid the baker on Thursdays. He waters his bread with river water. Steer clear of the red haired twins. They share everything but their luck. Sometimes gossip is currency, traded as carefully as a coin, swapped for news of a good heap or a merchant with a soft spot for pity. You learn to listen, even as you pretend not to care. Every scrap of information might mean the difference between an empty sack and a lucky day, between trouble and escape. In a city that does not care if you live or die, sometimes a rumor is all you have to guide you. So you become a story yourself, part monster, part joke, part cautionary tale. It does not matter. You know the truth. You are just hungry, just tired, just trying to last another day. Let them talk. In the end, words are lighter to carry than stones. When night finally settles over the city, it does so without ceremony, swallowing the last stains of twilight and smothering what little hope the day has left behind. The darkness here is thick, sticky, absolute, a living thing that creeps into alleys and crawls beneath doorways, that wraps itself around your neck and whispers of all the things that might be waiting just out of sight. For a scavenger, darkness is both shelter and enemy. It is a time to vanish and a time to fear vanishing altogether. You feel it as soon as the sun's last gray sigh disappears behind the rooftops. The city changes its face. The laughter from the taverns grows meaner, more desperate. The voices of the watchmen sharpen, and even the dogs quiet, slinking into whatever corners they can find. Your own senses strain. Every sound is magnified. Every shadow seems to move. Every step is measured against the threat of being noticed by the wrong set of eyes. You know these dangers as well as you know your own hunger. You do not fear the dark itself. You fear what the darkness brings. You fear the men who prowl the streets in groups, their faces hidden, their intentions simple: coin, violence, or both. You fear the city guards, emboldened by shadows and the knowledge that whatever happens out here will not trouble their conscience. You fear the ones who are desperate enough to do what you might do yourself, given the wrong night and the right provocation. You choose your sleeping place with care, scanning each potential refuge for signs of recent use. The safest corners are already claimed, barricaded with crates guarded by alliances formed in misery. You know better than to try your luck with these small tribes. Instead, you settle for a patch of ground behind a pile of collapsed timber, your back to the wall, your sack wedged beneath your head, your stick held tight across your chest. You curl into yourself, becoming as small as you can, trying to convince the night that you are not worth the trouble. But the dark is not so easily fooled. You hear it moving, the soft scrape of a boot, the quick scurry of a rat, the drip of water from a broken gutter. Every sound is a question, friend or foe. Every silence is a threat, every sudden noise a test of your nerves. Sleep comes only in snatches, shallow and unsteady, broken by the constant awareness that you are prey here as much as you ever are in daylight. You remember stories told by the elders, those who lasted long enough to become something more than rumor. Stories of people who vanished at night, swallowed by the city, never seen again. Some say they were taken by the river, others that they fell afoul of the gangs who rule the night. Sometimes you imagine the city itself is hungry, reaching up through its cracks to drag you down into its belly. These thoughts chase each other through your head, as persistent and useless as fleas. There is an economy to fear in the darkness. The price of safety is always too high, and most nights you can only afford a small down payment, a hard corner, a quick retreat, the hope that you are not the slowest or weakest thing out here. You listen for the warning signs, a distant shout, the clatter of running feet, the sudden hush that means something is about to happen. You have learned to freeze at the first sign of trouble, to hold your breath, to wait until whatever it is has passed by. You do not want to know what happens to those who fail the test. Sometimes you meet others out in the night, other scavengers, mostly, moving like ghosts through the ruined places, eyes shining with reflected torchlight. You do not speak. Conversation is for daylight, for the illusion of safety. At night, even a greeting can be a risk, can mark you as awake, as vulnerable, as someone with something worth stealing. You nod, if anything, then slip away, each of you hoping the other is not desperate enough to forget the rules. There are other threats, too. Rats become bolder, emboldened by hunger and the safety of the dark. Packs of dogs roam, fighting over scraps, their eyes catching the faintest glimmer of moonlight. Sometimes you see their shadows flicker and dance across the broken stones, and you shudder, remembering the teeth, the speed, the hunger. In this world, you are never far from the bottom of the food chain, and always the city itself seems to shift in the darkness. Familiar streets twist into mazes, landmarks disappear. The puddles you avoided in daylight now look like bottomless pits. Even the smell of the city changes, sharper, colder, tinged with the coppery scent of things best left unexamined. It is as if the darkness brings out the city's true nature, not just dirt and disease, but danger, violence, the kind of fear that cannot be washed away. You try to sleep in anyway, because you must. Your body rebels, bones aching, stomach churning, skin crawling with the memory of every brush with danger. Sometimes your dreams are worse than the waking world. Visions of falling, of being chased, of losing everything and everyone you have ever known. You wake with a start, breath caught in your throat, certain for a moment that you are already gone. When morning finally begins to filter through the cracks, it does so without apology. The darkness recedes, but it leaves something behind, a residue of fear, a new set of bruises, a tally of what was lost and what was barely kept. You sit up, flex your stiff fingers, and listen to the city stirring to life once more. Another night survived, another small victory. But the fear lingers, hiding beneath the daylight, reminding you that in this city, darkness is never far away. Night will come again, and with it, the old questions, the old dangers, the old unwelcome company of fear. You shoulder your sack, check your pockets for losses, and step into the pale morning, bracing yourself for whatever fresh misery the new day will bring. You have survived the dark this time. That is all you can ask. When you measure your life in what the city throws away, dinner is never about satisfaction. It is a ceremony of necessity, the closing act in a day of scraping, fighting, and compromise. Evening's hunger is sharper than noon's, honed by the memory of everything you did not find, everything that was lost to rain, rats, rivals, and luck. By the time you crouch in the half-sheltered corner you call home, your body aches for rest, but your stomach is always louder. You sit on a slab of stone, back pressed against a cracked wall, sack between your feet, like a dragon's hoard of misery. The night is full of other sounds, voices from behind thin doors, the slap of boots, the whimper of a child, laughter from the tavern across the street. For most of the city, the day is ending. For you, it is merely pausing. You open your sack with hands clumsy from cold and exhaustion. The day's finds are unimpressive even by your standards. A crust of bread gone hard as stone, a strip of meat whose origin you wisely avoid questioning, a handful of boiled peas, and the piece of cheese you rescued from the tavern's heap. There are also less edible treasures: a tin cup, a bit of rope, rags to wrap around your feet, a button for some future trade. You lay it all out, counting the pieces as if counting will conjure more. There is an art to making this meager collection last. You gnaw at the bread, sucking it until your spit softens the edge. Each bite is a reminder of your luck. This bread might have fed a rat or turned to mold in a puddle, but it is yours for one more night. The peas are cold and mushy, a little sour, but you eat them one by one, savoring each as if it is the last you will ever have. The meat you sniff, then chew cautiously, hoping the salt and your stubbornness will be enough to keep the sickness at bay. You save the cheese for last. It is not good cheese. The edges are gray, the middle soft, the smell sharp as an insult. You scrape away the worst, eating the rest in small bites, making it last as long as possible. It is almost a feast compared to some nights. When it is gone, you lick your fingers, catching every crumb. Dinner is never enough, but it is always more than nothing. In this moment, you find a kind of bitter gratitude, not joy, not contentment, but the simple relief of still being here. You thank no one and nothing in particular, not the city, not fate, not any god who would let a soul live this way. You thank the absence of bad luck, the indifference of the rats who left you something to eat, the laziness of the guard who ignored you tonight, the slow hand of disease that has not yet caught up with you. Your prayer is an inside joke. Thank you for this, whatever this is, and please let me have something again tomorrow. Around you, the city's other invisible people are eating too, each in their patch of shadow, each counting their finds, each offering their own version of desperate thanks. You hear quiet voices, the clink of tin spoons, the mutter of curses and gratitude mixed together. This is community, of a sort, a congregation of the forgotten, sharing the same brief comfort beneath the city's indifference. Sometimes, in these moments, you allow yourself a memory of how things might have been. You picture a real table, a bowl of warm soup, the soft voice of someone who cares whether you live or die. The memory does not hurt as much as it used to. You have grown expert at filing it away, tucking it behind the practical business of staying alive. You patch your wounds as best you can, wrap your feet in rags, and take a last drink from your tin cup. The water is cloudy, tinged with the taste of rust and earth, but you swallow it all. You know tomorrow it might be worse. There is no ceremony to the end of dinner, no fullness, no sigh of satisfaction. You gather up your things, counting them again, checking for losses. You tuck your food away from the rats, your stick beside you, your sack as a makeshift pillow. Above you, clouds smother the moon, promising another night of uneasy dreams. As you drift into something like sleep, you whisper your last thanks, not for what you have, but for what you have not lost. You have learned that in this life, survival is the only miracle that matters. You close your eyes, half listening to the city, feeling hunger recede just enough to let fatigue take over. You do not ask for more. You do not expect mercy, but you allow yourself, just for a moment, the luxury of being glad to be alive. Still, despite everything, despite the city's best efforts, despite the filth and the cold and the endless, gnawing hunger, you sleep, if not peacefully, then at least with the knowledge that for one more night you have won. Sleep, like everything else in your life, is a negotiation with fate. It arrives not as a gentle invitation, but as a thief, creeping in only when exhaustion has left you too weak to resist. You do not seek comfort, you seek oblivion, the chance to vanish for a few hours, to drift beyond the reach of hunger, cold, and memory. In a world that has taken nearly everything from you, even sleep is rationed, and you accept it on whatever terms it is willing to offer. Your roof tonight is not a roof in any real sense. It is a patchwork of boards, rags, and old thatch, half collapsed and propped up against a wall, more for show than shelter. Rain seeps through in places, cold drops finding your face and shoulders, no matter how carefully you arrange your rags. The wind whistles through holes, pulling at what little warmth you have managed to gather. The smell is a mixture of mildew, rot, and the sharp animal scent of too many bodies in too small a space. But it is yours for now, and that is enough. You lie curled around your sack, feet wrapped in cloth, stick across your lap. Every muscle aches, every bruise throbs in time with your heartbeat, every scrape and bite and blister complains for attention. You tell your body to be quiet, to save its strength for tomorrow. The city does not care about your pain, so there is no use in wasting breath on it. Sleep does not come all at once. It circles you, cautious, testing the air. You listen to the familiar sounds, water dripping, someone coughing nearby, the distant bark of a dog, the constant background hum of the city settling into its nighttime miseries. You wait for danger to pass, for the world to forget you long enough to let your guard down. Eventually, your eyelids droop, your thoughts blur, and the line between waking and dreaming grows thin. Your dreams are never kind. Some nights you dream of better things: a meal that fills your belly, a fire that warms your bones, a bed that does not crawl with lice. But most often, your dreams replay the day's events in grotesque detail: the dogs, the fights, the endless search for something to fill the hollow inside you. Sometimes you dream of falling, of sinking into the city's filth, of being swallowed up and never seen again. You always wake before you hit the ground. There is no real safety in your sleep. You startle awake at the smallest noise: a footstep too close, a voice raised in anger, the clatter of something being knocked over nearby. Each time, Your heart thunders in your chest. Your hand closes around your stick, and you listen, body tense, waiting for the danger to pass or reveal itself. Some nights, the danger is real. A thief searching for easier prey, a rat bold enough to nibble at your toes, a city guard in a bad mood. You learn to make yourself small, to feign sleep, to hope you are beneath notice. Yet there are moments when sleep grants you something precious. Forgetting, for a few hours, you do not remember how hungry you are, or how cold, or how many sores fester on your skin. You do not hear the city's insults, or feel its eyes crawling over you like another breed of vermin. You do not count your failures or measure your hope in crumbs. For a while, you are nothing at all. Just breath, just heartbeat, just warmth borrowed from the rags and refuse you have gathered. If you are lucky, the night will pass quietly. Morning will find you stiff, cold, and hungry, but alive. You will count your fingers, your toes, the contents of your sack, and find that nothing important has been taken in the dark. You will gather yourself, rise into the weak light, and begin again, moving through the city's endless labyrinth with the slow determination of those who have nothing left to lose. The city's respectable folk will pass by, noses wrinkled, eyes averted, convinced that your sleep is a kind of laziness, that your suffering is the result of poor choices or weak character. Let them think what they will. You know the truth. Every hour of sleep beneath this ragged roof is a victory. Every dawn you survive is a small act of rebellion against a world that would prefer you to simply disappear. As the morning seeps in, gray, sour, indifferent, you shake the rags from your shoulders, rub the sleep from your eyes, and rise. The aches are familiar, the hunger an old friend. You pack your things, tie your sack tight, and step out into the alleys once more. The day begins again, and with it, the same unending rituals, the search, the scramble, the trading of dignity for crumbs. But for now, for one brief moment between the end of night and the beginning of another day, you allow yourself to be grateful, not for what you have, but for what you have survived. You are still here, beneath your ragged roof, forgotten but not gone, and that, in this city, is everything.